if everybody will stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. Has everybody had an opportunity to read over February 4th minutes?
Motion to approve the minutes.
Second.
All right, we got a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right, motion passes. All right, it brings us to announcements. At this point, I don't see any announcements that we have to make. We have no old business. So that takes us to new business. And we're going to our new A, which is a quasi-judicial public hearing. It's for application CPA 19-01. It's an application by Jamie Tate, agent for Newberry Church of God, doing business as Destiny Community Church, owner, for a small-scale plan amendment to the future land use plan map of the City of Newberry Comprehensive Plan. It's a change of future land use category from planned development to commercial on properties identified as, Alachua County tax parcels, 01990 tax 000 tax 000 and 01990 tax 00 tax 000, consisting of approximately 0.8 of an acre, more or less. If this passes, we'll announce the date of the application will first be heard by the City Commission. At this point, does anybody on the board have any ex parte communications regarding?
I want to recuse myself from these two. As an absence of caution, I do live in Oakview Village, so this would.
And to clarify on that, what Naeem is saying is not necessarily that he's had any ex parte communications, but he may have an interest in the decision that's
Correct.
before the board today, so he's recusing himself on that basis, and we'll get with him about filling out the Form 8 that needs to be submitted to the state and all that sort of stuff.
All right. All right, since this is a quasi-judicial hearing, I'm going to go over our procedures so that everybody knows what's going on. The city attorney or chair will read into the record the ordinance, resolution by title and number, or the applicant's name, file number, and the subject matter to be decided if there is no ordinance or resolution. The city attorney or chair shall explain the rules concerning testimony, primarily that the substantial and competent evidence must be met when the board makes a decision, and shall state the following. All public testimony will be taken under oath. Everyone testifying will be subject to cross-examination, and all documents and exhibits shall be entered into evidence. The giving of opinion testimony is limited to experts, and closing arguments will be limited to the evidence of record. The city attorney or chair shall explain the procedure and order of presentations. The applicant, staff, and all participants requesting to speak may be collectively sworn at the beginning of the hearing by the city attorney or designee. And we need to disclose any ex parte communications and disclose whether any member physically inspected the property. At that point, we'll have a presentation order. And, all right, so at this point, I'll ask legal to give an oath to anybody who is speaking on this application. If there's anybody here speaking on the application CPA 19-01, I'll need you to stand up and raise your right hand.
There's only 2 speakers in the room. There's a lot of people here. Is there anybody who intends to speak on the matter that we're discussing right now? Okay, raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear to tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth? You're duly sworn.
All right. At this time, we'll, in the presentation order, we've got the staff overview. If staff wants to give us an overview of what we're looking at today.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is basically, it's sort of a cleanup in one respect. This is a request for a small-scale comprehensive land use plan change on a couple of small parcels that, when bundled together, comprise what is currently the Destiny Community Church property. The church is in the process of selling that property as they get ready to move to their new facilities that are under construction, and as part of the sale, the next owners requested that the future land use be changed from planned development to the more appropriate category of commercial, and then the next item before you'll come up is similar for the zoning, and that's a general overview of the action for you tonight.
Okay.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, sir.
question for Rob. So the church was here before Oakview came. How did Oakview incorporate the property that they didn't own into their planned development?
Mr. Chair, that's actually a good question. It happened before my tenure, so I really don't have an answer for that. I didn't have a chance to go dig into the records to find out why it's got a future land use of PD, but somehow, and maybe at some point and it might have gone to the planned development that was approved years before that, before they amended what they've actually constructed. But I kind of had the same thought. I honestly just don't have an answer because I wasn't able to find it in the documentation why those parcels were included in the PD instead of industrial or something, which was its previous use many years ago.
So this is just a housekeeping item to put it back to where it should have been all the time.
That's it.
Commercial.
All right. At this point, if the applicant is present, can make a presentation, and there's no time limit on your presentation. If you could, state your name.
Jamie Tate.
All right.
So I don't have an official presentation, and I won't take much time, but basically what we're trying to do is we currently own Greenfield Preschool, which is here in Newberry, and we're looking for a second location in Newberry just to expand. We're not trying to replace our current facility, but there's a huge need in this community for a child care facility. So what we're trying to do is purchase DCC to remodel it basically as a child care facility.
Can I ask a question? Leo, am I okay to ask questions?
Yes, and just to clarify also, with respect to 90's recusal from this, he's not going to participate in any motion or vote that's made, but he certainly has the ability and the right to go ahead and ask questions and cross-examine.
Okay.
Chair, in converting it to commercial, does the property stay intact? Like, are they removing the mobile homes that are there, the buildings that are there? Is that something, once it moves to commercial, we pretty much, they're free to build a 4-story preschool, 1-story preschool? I'm not saying you're going to build a 4-story preschool, but just hypothetically speaking, are they allowed to just do whatever they want with that land?
On this particular quasi-judicial hearing, I'm not sure that we address that portion of it. I think that would come up on the next.
Mr. Chair, basically the future land use category of commercial is the overlying layer, so to
Correct.
speak, that allows for certain zoning districts under it. And so the next step would be the rezoning. And anything that's listed by right in the rezoning category that they're requesting, if approved, would then be permissible.
Correct.
Without any kind of special exception. And they would have to follow the rules for commercial intensive, assuming that that's approved. Then there are height limitations and floor area ratio limitations and those kind of things that they would have to follow.
I'm not sure if it's appropriate, but I can answer your question as far as our plans, if that helps. Is that allowed?
It is.
So we plan on keeping the existing building and just renovating basically the building as is. So, I mean, we have plans that will have to be approved and everything, but we plan on just renovating the inside, leaving the building as is, and the mobile home will be removed, hopefully, just to be able to have a parking area, basically. But we don't plan on building additions or adding on or doing multiple story buildings. It's just going to be renovating the current building that's there.
This is going to make a lot of people in our little community really happy. Because everybody's been freaking out what's going there. And the fact that you're already announcing it's going to most likely be the preschool.
And one of the other concerns that some people in the neighborhood brought up too was just maybe the hours of operation. So, I mean, for us, we think of it as we're going to be there basically when you guys are working rather than night times and weekends. And so, for the most part, any of the noisy times will be while you guys are all at work. But we don't have any plans to do any other renovations as far as that.
What's the name of your business?
Greenfield Preschool?
Yeah, you guys get great reviews online. So,
Thank you. Thank you.
And you're filled to capacity, so it's good to know
Yes.
that you guys are
Yes.
opening up new options.
We've got like 175 on the wait list right now. So this facility, if we're able to open, would then allow for anywhere between 90 and 96 additional families to be served there.
Wow.
And then hopefully between 15 to 20 additional jobs too.
All right. Do you need to add anything else? Do you have anything else to add? No. All right. So at this time, we're going to have staff give us a report and recommendation.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. There we go. We've basically gone through these items in the overview. It is 3 small parcels that in combination make up the entirety of the property. It's approximately 0.88 acres, so it's not a large parcel. Which we went over, it was originally part of the Oakview Village plan development for some as yet undetermined reason. The church has entered into the sale agreement with the state, contingent upon the successful land use change and rezoning, which the rezoning will be contingent upon the approval of the land use change. The PD change from PD to commercial is consistent with the adjacent properties that also front State Road 45 in the area. The adjacent categories are planned development, commercial, public, and residential density. And the change in land use is consistent with our comprehensive plan and the future land use element in policy I.6.1.2. Just to give you an overview, you can see the red corridor that goes north and south there. That is our State Road 45 commercial corridor. The Newberry Road corridor there is also the one that you see the pinkish red color scheme. So you can see we've been, the pattern of development has been for commercial along those transportation corridors where it's appropriate. You can see just see the subject parcel down on the south there outlined in red, where the green is the planned development color. And then a little bit of a blow up, you can see directly north, the future land use on those properties is commercial, both adjacent and across the street. It's directly across the street from Oakview Middle School. And for those reasons, staff recommends approval of the small scale land use change, comprehensive plan amendments, UK 1901.
All right. Is that it?
Yes, sir.
All right. Do we have any third-party interveners that wish to speak? All right. Any public comments? All right. So, all right. Does anybody on the board have questions for staff?
Second.
I don't know if we're there yet. Does the applicant have anything else to add? No? All right. Sounds like we are there. All right, do you want the attorney to read the resolution by title and number?
Mr. Chair,
Yes, sir?
we haven't prepared the draft ordinance yet. That'll go before the commission at the first reading
Okay.
when it comes up.
And I believe the issue's already been read into the record at the beginning. The chair
Or maybe Brian did read what the title is in his staff report, and that's what the motion would be
All right.
based on.
All right.
The question for the board is going to be whether it meets the substantial and competent evidence standard
All right.
based on the presentations from staff and the applicant.
So we've got a motion at this point then, we've got a motion
And a second.
and a second. Anybody, any public want to speak to the motion? All right, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right, motion passes unanimous. All right, takes us to our new B, which is also a quasi-judicial public hearing for application LDR 19-02. It's an application by Jamie Tate, agent for Newberry Church of God, doing business as Destiny Community Church owner, to amend the official zoning atlas of the city of Newberry by changing the zoning from planned development to commercial intensive on property identified as Alachua County tax parcel 01990, tax 000, tax 000, and 01990, tax 002, tax 000, consisting of 0.78 acres, more or less. This application is contingent upon approval of application CPA 19-01, and we'll announce the date the applications will first be heard by the City Commission at the end of this presentation.
Mr. Chair, sorry to interrupt, but I do want to back up for just a second on new business, new item A. We do need to announce the date the application will first be heard by the City Commission.
Okay, that is March 11th.
Okay. Now we can proceed.
Okay, I was going to do them both at the same time.
Okay, my
but-
apologies.
All right. So we have staff overview on this one.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Again, this is the same properties we were just talking about for the small-scale comp plan amendment. This is the rezoning measure. The two of the three parcels are zoned industrial. Again, probably a lingering holdover from back when the parcel was part of the old pipe plant facility. There is a small piece, and when we get to the map, I'll show you that when we get to the actual presentation, that is actually zone PD. It was part of the planned development and is being deeded over to the church. And so that's the overview. I don't know if the applicant would like to speak towards this. It's mostly the same.
All right. So at this point, does the applicant have a presentation for this portion? Okay. So then we go into staff report.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
We do want to just clarify one more time. I think Naeem has the exact same issue here that we talked about with item A. So he is recusing himself, as I understand it. But again, he's able.
Yeah, he had mentioned both A,
Okay.
A and B when he asked for that.
Okay.
So,
Okay,
all right. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Basically, all of the same information with the exception of this is going to be a rezoning request as opposed to a small-scale comprehensive plan. The parcel 1900 was originally zoned planned development as part of Oakview Village. When we get to the map, you'll see that that very tiny parcel, and then the other two parcels are the parcels that actually front State Road 45. And as I said, I think we're probably zoned industrial as a holdover from when they were part of the original pipe plant. Talked about the sales agreement. The change from planned development to commercial and industrial to commercial is consistent with the development pattern on the corridor. Surrounding properties are already zoned either planned development, commercial intensive, or residential single family 1 and 2. Again, the corridors, this is the zoning atlas map. And so you can see that all of the properties in the commercial corridor north of the subject properties are already zoned commercial intensive. And then a close-up of the properties in question. You see the little, on the southwest corner of the diagram there, the outline, that is that small parcel that is actually zoned PD as part of Oakview Village. It's a parcel that there was actually an encroachment of an existing shed on, and the developer for Oakview Village allowed the church to maintain that parcel and has now deeded it over to the church. And that's the addendum that I handed out to you before the meeting. It was the quitclaim deed from the owners to the church for that little parcel identified as 1990 on the chart there. And so the staff recommendation is to recommend to the City Commission approval of LDR 1902.
Okay.
That concludes my presentation.
All right, does the applicant have anything that she wants to add again at this time? All right, any questions for staff? All right, so at this,
Can I ask Brian, that's the difference, the .88 and the .78 and the one we're doing now, that's that little tiny point is the
Yes.
difference in it.
Yes, ma'am. That's your difference right there.
Okay.
And that back in, you get the 88.
all right, staff or board have any other questions?
Move for approval of LDR 1902.
Second.
All right, we've got a motion and a second. Anybody out in the public wish to speak to the motion on the floor? All right, so we got a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right, motion passes unanimous. All right, so this takes us to the item of the night.
On March 11th as
Oh,
well.
March 11th, I'm sorry. Yes, this will be heard by the City Commission on March 11th. So this takes us to C, which is a quasi-judicial public hearing for application LDR 1901. It's an application by CHW Professional Consultants, agent for Canterbury Showplace, Inc., owner, to amend the Canterbury Plan Development or Development Order 13-11, located at 23100 West Newberry Road, Newberry, Florida, on property identified as Alachua County Tax Parcel 01919, Tax 003, Tax 000, consisting of 36.7 acres, more or less. The purpose of the request is to ensure that permitted uses are consistent with the site's intended use as Alachua County Fairgrounds. And again, at the end of this, we'll announce the date the application will first be heard by the City Commission. Since this, again, is a quasi-judicial public hearing, we're going to read the procedures. The City Attorney or Chair will read into the record the ordinance, resolution by title and number, or the applicant's name, file number, and the subject matter to be decided if there's no ordinance or resolution. City Attorney or Chair shall explain the rules concerning testimony, primarily that the substantial and competent evidence must be met when the board makes a decision, and shall state the following. All public testimony will be taken under oath. Everyone testifying will be subject to cross-examination. All documents and exhibits shall be entered into evidence, and the giving of opinion testimony is limited to experts. Closing arguments will be limited to the evidence of record. The City Attorney or Chair shall explain the procedure and order of presentations. The applicant, staff, and all participants requesting to speak may be collectively sworn at the beginning of the hearing by the City Attorney or designee. And will disclose any ex parte communications and disclose whether any member physically inspected the property. And then, of course, we'll have the same presentation order as the last two that we just went through. At this point, does any of the board have any ex parte communications they would like to disclose? I have none.
I've been contacted by several citizens who are concerned.
Okay.
Would those contacts influence your impartiality at all with
No,
respect?
they would not
Okay.
affect my partiality.
Okay. All right, at this time, anybody wishing to speak on behalf of application LDR 1901, I would need you to stand and be sworn in.
Everybody does. You raise your right hand, please. You solemnly swear to tell the truth and nothing but the truth?
I do. Hang on one second. I just want to make sure everybody understands that if you want to get up to the mic and talk, this would be the time.
This
If you're
is
just
good.
here to listen, that's fine, but we want to make sure if you're here to talk about Canterbury. Questions, anything that you want to,
Yeah.
anything that you might want to talk. That's why we'll get it all done at one time.
That's why we're trying to get it, all the swearing in.
Yeah.
And if you showed
Want to
up,
make sure everybody gets sworn in that wants to speak.
you should ask
So-
questions if you took the time to show up.
Could you all raise your right hand, please? Do you solemnly swear to tell the truth and nothing but the truth? You are all duly sworn.
All right. So at this point, if staff would give us an overview, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As you mentioned, this is a request to amend the development order on the existing Canterbury planned development. The existing, and I won't go into detail here, I'll go into detail in the staff report, but the existing planned development allows for a certain level of commercial development as well as additional residential development, and has its own list of permissible uses, permitted uses, and prohibited uses. The application before you tonight was requesting by the county to amend that list of permitted uses and replace it with a list of uses that are more specific to the uses, the agricultural fairground. And that's the general overview.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Is the applicant here tonight? If you want to step up to the mic and introduce yourself, sir.
Ryan Thompson, Planning Project Manager with CHW, agent for the applicant. Good evening, Mr. Chair, Mr. Mayor, members of the board. This is very much a housekeeping item to ensure that the plan development and associated development order allows for the intended uses for the Alachua County Agriculture and Equestrian Center. I have a very brief presentation that I'd like to share with you, and then at the end, if you have any questions or even during, please ask. Again, we're amending the Canterbury Plan Development Order 13-11 with the intent of ensuring that the permitted uses are consistent with the Alachua County Agricultural and Equestrian Center. We have followed the City of Newberry's process with the first step on November 21st. We're before you this evening, and then tentatively we'll go before the City Commission on March 25th and April 8th for first and second reading. This is an aerial map from 1999, 20 years ago, that shows the facilities on the Canterbury site. As you see, the aerials progress through time. The facilities on the Canterbury site have changed very little, but the development around it certainly has. This is 99, then this is the project site that's subject to the development order. In 2004, you see residential development start to the west for Newberry Oaks. And then last year's aerial showing the development that's even encroaching on some of the equestrian facilities for Canterbury. This is a close-up of the project site. Again, it's on Newberry Road and 232nd, which leads into Newberry Oaks. and then Komoko Ranch to the east. Existing future land use is planned development, as well as the existing and proposed PD. Again, we are looking at just the permitted uses on the site. This is the zoning master plan that was adopted in 2013 with the original PD. It had two land use areas, mixed use to the north, which allowed both commercial and residential uses, and then the commercial area to the south. There's not much difference in the way of that with this PD zoning master plan. We did combine all of the areas into one. When we went through and looked at the permitted uses, we vetted out some of the uses that wasn't in line with Alachua County's vision for the property. So the mixed use, which would have a residential component, was removed. That's why there's one land use area versus two. We did also include a 50-foot buffer along the top, which was identified in the language of the development order, but not displayed graphically on the zoning master plan. We just felt it was appropriate to include required buffers on the zoning master plan. Again, the project site, the developable area, and then the buffer to the north. Access, there are two access locations along 232nd. Those may be realigned based on future programming needs, but that's where they exist now. Then proposed connection to the east if future development comes for that property. And
not yet.
And then per Development Order 13-11, the setbacks have been retained for buildings on site. The proposed permitted uses, again, we looked at the development order that was with the current property owner as well as those proposed by Alachua County, and came up with what's before you here. The uses in black, and I apologize for the small font size, but the uses in black were already included in the original development order. Those that are in more of a blue underlined color are new uses. They include agricultural events, sports, consumer trade shows, festivals, banquets, food events, and concerts, agriculture fairs and fairgrounds, specifically identifying rental facilities, educational programs, and livestock auction arenas and concourse. And then also adding some specificity to the recreational vehicles that are allowed on site when in conjunction with on-site activities or events. And with that, Mr. Chair, that concludes my presentation. Again, if any members of the board have questions, I'm happy to answer those.
Okay. Anybody have any questions? Go ahead.
Mr. Chair, I see on page, got a big echo here.
Yeah, a lot of feedback.
On page 3 of our package, it shows all the. Janine, can you turn the volume down a little bit? I'm getting a big echo. Under it shows the items. Page 2, mixed use area. It shows 20 items listed under there, all of which were taken out. The first one being apartments, townhomes, single family, attached, detached residential dwelling. And then it goes, and then on page 3, the bottom of page 3, it shows the new permitted uses which are put in. There are 14 of them. And not included in that 14 is anything about apartments, townhomes, or residential. But then a little later in the package, it talks about on page 8, policy 1.6 says planned development within the designated area outside the services. It says this area may include residential, low, medium, and high density land use. But we took residential out of the permit. I'm a little confused about why we took it out, and then later on it addresses specifics as to how the residential is going to be used.
Mr. Chair, the proposed uses is what will guide this process. I can estimate a clerical error that it was specified later in the document. There's no intent for residential uses on the project site.
Why this whole page of policy 1.6.2, 1.6.2.3 goes into great detail about how much can be used for residential and the flow and the intensities, the floor ratio areas for homes. Leaves me wondering, are we going to have, it wouldn't seem like the county would put any residential in there, but why have we added all this thing to the plan development amendment?
Right, go ahead. Ron, answer this.
Mr. Chair, what you're actually looking at there is leftover vestiges of the old plan development order, and I've actually spoken with Mr. Thompson about that, and there's probably some more cleanup that needs to be done out of the existing PD that's no longer relevant based on what the permitted uses would be. And so they at this point they focused on the permitted uses versus all the rest of the language, but there's quite a bit that could be basically just struck because it no longer is relevant, because you're no longer having permitted uses that are relevant to residential use.
Sounds like this needs some work before it goes in front of the commission. I'd like to see a version of it cleaned up and see how much of this you're going to take out of there before it goes to the city commission.
Chair? Yes. Is that the only page? Can you strike that page?
Mr. Chair, we'd sit down and we'd go over and find all the areas that are no longer relevant based on the actual uses that would be that are being considered, and strike those. There's liable to be a couple of different areas that would.
Because the first thing that was stated is the removal of the residential, and then we just made it the one land use minus the residential, and that was in one of the first graphics they displayed. Any other questions right off?
That's it for now. I'll have more after we hear what the public has to say.
All right. At this time, do we have any third-party interveners that wish to speak?
I have a question.
You have a question? Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
On permitted use, Mr. Chair. My question is on number 3, agricultural fairs and fairground activities. There seems to be like an ongoing debate back and forth of what exactly fairgrounds activities. I mean, if we're talking agriculture, that's different than the youth fair and having, merry-go-rounds and slides. And the youth fair, this to me tells me that agricultural fair, obviously, however, it's also squeezing in their fairground activities. To me, sounds like we're going to open it up for the possibility of a carnival style to come into our area. Is that correct?
Mr. Chair, it's been publicized in the paper. Alachua County has separated ties with the Alachua County Fairgrounds Association, so that will not be an activity that will be on this site. We do have representatives from Alachua County that are here that may wish to elaborate on the intent of including fairgrounds in the permitted uses.
Mr. Chair, just for the record, I just wanted to make sure that we make that really clear, because that is a stir of the pot that I want to address, and it's not just as a concerned citizen of Newberry. It's pretty much what you hear out and about, is making sure that this is not going to turn into the county fair, a county carnival.
It's already a permitted use.
Mr. Chair. You're correct. I mean, there have been carnivals out there. Some of them were in the past were held in conjunction with the Watermelon Festival. And they were not of the... Yeah. Up, down, up, down. There. I'm known for. The carnivals, as having participated in those in the past, my recollection is they were not of the scale of an Alachua County carnival, and the likelihood is that just given the size limitations of the property that we're looking at, this is 37 acres and change. The Alachua County Fairgrounds, where the Fair Association was holding the fair, was something in the 90-plus range, and so. It's not to say that a carnival-style event couldn't be held there. There's probably opportunity for that, but logistically, it would be very challenging to try to have anything of the scale that the carnival.
Just not big enough for Alachua County Fair.
So, Mr. Chair, my question is there any way we can keep the verbiage agricultural fairs and put something in the extent of, carnival-style fairs and describe carnival, being the zipper ride and whatever you want to say in there, just because of the fact of not allowing it to be an open, hey, we got it approved as fairgrounds, now they can't stop us from saying we're going to have a county fair there. Is there any way we can have verbiage issues there?
I'm going to try to take this one.
Sorry.
We've worked really hard on this, and there's no way that we can write language that would allow the Newberry Watermelon Festival to be there and have the carnival rides that it's had in the past, and not, you can't say this one is okay and this one's not okay. So what we've done is we've agreed with the county that we're going to go with the strictest regulations, whether they're City of Newberry regulations or the county regulations, which is why you see things like a 50-foot buffer. But the salient point is that the existing fairgrounds is over 90 acres. Canterbury is 38. So there's no way that you can squeeze that kind of fairground into Canterbury and have a place to park. It's just not logistically possible. So we worked with the county, and I really want to thank the county for working with us so hard on this. But there's no way for us to discriminate and say, we want the Newberry Watermelon Festival, but we don't want your festival. And I know that it's very confusing, and the Gainesville Sun did not help with that confusion. But the Alachua County government and the Alachua County Fair are separate entities. Just like the Newberry Watermelon Festival is a separate entity than the City of Newberry. They have their own board, they make their own decisions. And right now, as it stands, those two entities are no longer associated with each other. So right now, they're not even partners anymore. So the site is too small for the Alachua County Fair. They've been pretty clear since the beginning that they want to stay in an urban core. The county has been very clear, and the City of Newberry has been very clear that we don't think that that's a good site, appropriate site for a facility or an event of that size. Even if it was possible to squeeze the rides, there'd be no place to park. So it just doesn't make any common sense for the Alachua County Fair to seek out that venue. The Alachua County government has been very clear that they're looking for a home for the agricultural activities, FFA, 4-H. That's what we're focused on. Clearly, they're going to be doing other things there as well, just like they've always had. I mean, Canterbury has had circuses. They've had Newberry Watermelon Festival. They've had rodeos. They've had all of these things happening forever. So I understand people's concerns. I do. I feel for your concerns. And all I can tell you is that both the Newberry City Commission and the Alachua Commission have worked really, really hard to address those concerns. We are really striving to figure out a way that we can make this workable for the neighborhood and beneficial for the whole town. Because if the benefits for the whole town are there, they're immense. Ask any kid in FFA or 4-H, and they'll tell you how excited they are about this across the county. So we're trying as hard as we can to make this something that the whole town can get behind and can be positive about. And I apologize, the Gainesville Sun is not making that easy. It really that should have been a good day for Newberry Oaks residents to see that Alachua County and Alachua County Fair are not they're not in business with each other anymore. Instead, the Gainesville Sun muddled that. They've apologized to me. I've not seen a retraction. I don't expect to see one. But we're here tonight to hear your concerns, so that we can make sure that that buffer is dense, it's thick, so we can talk about sound and lights and all those kinds of things to do what we can. So that, I think, addresses your question. And if somebody has come up with a way that we could define fair in a different way in the last couple of weeks, I'd be glad to hear it. But Jane's been standing there waiting patiently to get in on this.
Gina Peebles, Assistant County Manager. I don't believe that I could be any more eloquent than Mayor Marlowe, but I did want to just clarify that, yes, we are going to be having some conversations with the Watermelon Festival. Yes, they have a midway, and that is the intent for us to try and work with them so that they would host their event at Canterbury, which does include a midway. So that was just my only comment.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, sir.
To add on to what Mayor Marlowe said, it is currently zoning permitting carnivals, and we've had carnival. If this doesn't happen tonight, it'll revert to its original zoning, which means if tomorrow somebody approaches Mr. Weissman and said, I want to have a carnival there, you can't. This doesn't really change what it's always been. We don't have many carnivals out here because it's not profitable. We don't have the big crowds that you get in Gainesville. We don't have the space. We don't have parking. None of that's going to change with the county taking it over.
That's my view of it as well.
Mr. Chair, if I can revamp my focus on, it's not just I think it's more of a concern of, you got, I would want to address maybe more of like the noise ordinance, something to that extent, because you are in a residential neighborhood. I do want this to come in the right way. Maybe there's a way we can address, certain time limitations, certain noise ordinances. That way the neighborhood around could be, we appease the county commission and we appease the fairgrounds and we appease ourselves and the residents.
Mr. Chair, if I may, I did prepare a slide speaking specifically to noise. Again, as Mr. Mayor Marlowe stated, that with respect to buffers, noise ordinances, or any of those kind of development standards, the approach to this will be to take the most restrictive of whether it's the city of Newberry or Alachua County. There are measures to determine specific noise levels. Both the city and the county have ordinances that address noise. It is something that is measurable. They have time limitations as well as noise limitations on what those can be, and that is enforceable both with fines and criminal prosecution for repeat offenses. So that is something that would be addressed with standard code.
All right, so at this time, we're going to open the floor for public comments, and everybody just come up and speak. You've got 3 minutes each. I'm sorry?
We haven't done the staff report yet, sir.
Did we miss a staff report? Man, all this talking up here. All right, okay, I take that back. At this point, we'll do the staff report. Yes, go ahead.
Swapping presentations. I have to.
See, don't make me go out and get my hammer.
Okay, so as we've been discussing, the current development order 1311 is what governs the development of this parcel right now. They're asking to amend that to allow for the uses that are under consideration as a agricultural fairground. It's been the home to Canterbury for decades now. back in 2013, the current owners changed the land use and the zoning.
Can everybody hear him okay? Janine, can you turn that up a little bit, please?
Never been accused of that before. I can hear it now. Okay, so in 2013, Canterbury Showplace Incorporated changed the land use classification from agriculture to planned development in anticipation of future development. Same with the rezoning, which was completed in 2014, which is where we're at now. Aerial view of the area in question, which I think everybody here is pretty familiar with. The adjacent land use categories right now, you have Corporate Park to the east on the Comoco Ranch facility, commercial to the west. Of course, you've got the low-density residential to the north and agricultural across the street still. And then your zoning is a similar development pattern with the residential single-family 2 to the north, agriculture still zoning on the east in the Comoco Ranch property, commercial intensive to the west, and then still agriculture across the street. Just so you understand what's currently approved for the planned development there, if it were to remain in PD, in the development order that is currently in place, you could have up to 160,000 square foot of commercial development and about 100 residential units. As we discussed, 2018, Alachua County entered into a purchase agreement to acquire Canterbury Showplace, to turn it into the Agricultural Fairgrounds and new home for the UF and IFAS Cooperative Extension Office. CHW has given their presentation on behalf of the county. He's going back and forth. Okay. The proposed amendments basically will take the existing list of permitted uses and eliminate all of those and replace it with a new list. Now, some of the items that were in there for clarity's sake and to clean it up, they struck through all of the, as you'll see in your packet, they struck through all of the permitted uses right now, and even those that were already in that list, they were replaced in the new list, just so it would be a clean list of permitted uses. And as was mentioned, the county has committed to in areas related to buffering, lighting, noise, and other code-related issues to go with the strictest of the two jurisdictions code in that respect. And so, just to give you an idea of all of the current permitted uses that are being struck, everything that was listed under mixed use, everything was listed under commercial, and then in the prohibited uses, there's also one line that they've struck, and because they addressed that in the new list of permitted uses when it comes to recreational vehicle parking overnight. And so then this is the first half of the list that they've replaced it with. Again, some of the uses are the same. Uses allowable under commercial general and commercial intensive. If you look at number 8, that's where they address the RV parking. It is permissible overnight when the parking is in conjunction with an on-site activity. So the person or people that are there have to be there for an event or function that's going on site. They're not going to be renting out RV spots just to randomly. Okay. And then continuing on, there's the remainder of the list of allowable uses that would be permitted under the amended development order. Staff believes that it's consistent with the use that's been going on. We think it's consistent with the plan development in the comp plan, and so staff recommends approval of application 1901 to the City Commission. Questions?
Any questions?
I'll go after you.
Okay.
I've been talking.
Actually, Mr. Chair, I have several questions, actually. First, I'll address, I think, the noise ordinance. Obviously, it will follow ours. In the past, people have complained that there's a lack of enforcement with our noise ordinance, and that they've contacted the sheriff and have either been told that they can't enforce it, they won't enforce it, etc. With such an event facility within our city, what steps can be taken to ensure that we have adequate enforcement?
Mr. Chair, it is correct that the Alachua County Sheriff's Office is the enforcement arm for noise ordinances in the city. There's a number of ways that noise, things like noise and lighting could be addressed. One of them would be to institute as part of the amendment application codifying the hours of operation or noise levels. You know, as it stands right now, our general code on noise is what would be enforced. I believe the evening, adjacent to residential, the evening noise level allowable at the property line is 55 decibels. And that's after, I believe, 9 o'clock. And so, as far as that, I mean, we could certainly work with the county to come up with a plan for a better noise enforcement specific to this property. And, of course, the county, the residents of the city of Newberry are also county residents, and so the county has a vested interest in keeping their residents happy as well, because they're all the same.
In conjunction with that, I know that since I've lived in Newberry, the amount of events out at Canterbury has declined. Has the city received any noise complaints in the last couple of years about the events that have gone on out there?
Mr. Chair, since I've been overseeing the Code Enforcement Department, I am not aware of any function-related noise complaints coming out of Canterbury that have come through our office. And so I don't have a record of any of those now.
You want me to keep going on? Mr. Chair?
You can keep going. I have my list of questions.
Okay,
right up there.
I have a list. So one of the other issues that has come up in discussions with other citizens is the traffic situation out there. Anyone who has come through when the Blue Jean and Black Tie event used to be out there and some of the other events can acknowledge that traffic has been backed up on Newberry Road. The Newberry Oaks residents complain quite frequently about the dangerousness of the 232nd and Newberry Road, and we frequently see accidents. I know on my way to work every morning. What type of traffic flow will this create? Will there be a need for a light from DOT? What steps are being taken to assess that?
Mr. Chair, the likelihood of the necessity for traffic light on State Road 26 at 232 is probably slim. It's probably not actually a need, because you're talking about a short-term need for a specific event or events that occur occasionally versus the daily. And those type of traffic control devices tend to be very expensive, both to procure and then also to maintain. And the traffic studies would have to justify that expense. But it is, just as it is now, and perhaps we can do a better job of it, but it's incumbent on whoever is going to rent the facility for an event to provide an adequate level of traffic flow enforcement in terms of people directing traffic, moving people into the parking area as quickly as possible, so they're not blocking the streets and that kind of thing. So again, it would definitely be an area we can work with the county to come up with some adequate control measures that would help alleviate those concerns as far as parking goes for events.
And I have one last question, Mr. Chair. Regarding the 50-foot buffer, I don't remember from the site plans. I know I've attended quite a few of the city commission meetings. What is going to be on that side that is closest to the buffer in that neighborhood? And will it be a clean buffer, or will there be vegetation to help limit the interaction between the property and the neighborhood?
Mr. Chair, the buffer requirement that we have in the city is basically you put in a staggered series of trees every so often that have to grow to a height of 10 feet after, I believe it's 5 years, minimum of 10 feet, staggered such that the canopy eventually touches, and then you have shrubberies down below that are also staggered that provide a lower visual buffer as well. And so it's reasonably dense, but and again too, that It's, we have our minimum code, and then there's opportunities to do more.
Is the parking intended to be on that site, on that side of the property? Or
Mr. Chair, we haven't discussed a site plan yet. The applicant hasn't brought forth a site plan. That'll come at a later stage. It'll lay all of that out.
Mr. Chair, as of right now, do we know which one is actually, we talk about which ordinance is greater. Do we know which one is greater? It's county ordinance or city ordinance?
Sure, that'll be specific on each individual type of item, whether it's noise, whether it's traffic, or the various code.
And a point about PD was brought up. Kind of interested. We're contracted with the sheriff's office right now for, I believe, 3 SROs, one in the one to be stationed 24 hours here, and then we got one in Foxtrot. However, when these events occur, who's going to be responsible in turn to provide extra PD coverage? Since we are technically just contracted with this county, would we be responsible to hire more PD? Would that be the event coordinators that will have to do, what do you call it, details for those events? Has that been talked about as far as PD coverages?
Mr. Chair, as it stands right now, certain events, if they were off-site of Canterbury, they'd be done by special temporary use permit, and in the special temporary use permit, it would outline the requirements for additional police coverage if the event warranted, the scale of the event. And so, again, specific to Canterbury, those are the kind of issues that we're trying to basically address here. And if those are adjustments that need to be made to the recommendation to the commission, it could be put there. Certainly, there are going to be certain events that are going to have enough of an attendance that there may be a need for additional, and then the additional, typically, again, using the example of a special temporary use permit, the applicant is required to provide those additional law enforcement officers at their expense. And so, again, it may very well be that certain thresholds are established where if an event is anticipated to have over a certain amount of participation or a certain type of participation, that the applicant would be required. But again, those are rules and guidelines that would need to be hashed out. And I'm sure the county actually has criteria to go by as well in that respect.
So my biggest concern with the whole PD thing is not just in the event, it's just the fact that it's so close to a residential neighborhood. Not just patrolling the actual event itself, but making sure there's extra coverage, maybe in the residential areas, making sure that, you know, whatever, that at least the piece of civilization stays, per se. My other concern, I was just looking this up, is what is 55 decibels? According to my research here, and this was just a quick Google search, was a passenger car going 65 miles an hour 25 feet away on a freeway would be considered 70 decibels. So you're talking about, like, if per se a merry-go-round were to show up, they better, like, make sure everything is quiet and no music is playing. Is that would be a pretty correct statement.
Mr. Chair, without getting into all the technical aspects of logarithmic scales and whatnot, 55 is actually considerably less than 70. Just
right.
Point that out because it does progress on a logarithmic scale. But again, that would be something where if it's an event that's going to generate, or the concern is that it's going to generate significant noise potential, then it would be incumbent on the applicant to do some sound testing and provide for that possibility before the event to show that it could be managed.
And my last thing is hours of operations. That's my biggest concern. It's just how do we go about with getting the hours of operations within a reasonable time frame, being it is a residential area, being so close to a residential area, without it impacting, you know, agriculture, stuff that we would ultimately love to see in our neighborhood. How can we keep hours of operations happy with everybody? I want to see what the city, what staff has for that.
As far as that goes, Mr. Chair, again, it's up to the Planning and Zoning Board if they have those types of recommendations to make them. Don't believe that it would be considered unreasonable to make suggestions over times, say Sunday through Thursday, or Friday, Saturday on the weekend. I mean, that's a fairly common type of condition that could be set, but it's. I don't anticipate, staff does not anticipate that the county is going to be leasing or renting these facilities to a lot of groups that are going to be cause these types of problems. I mean, the county's residents and the city residents are one and the same, and they're vested in everyone enjoying the facilities and the events that come to the facilities. And so I would assume that if it's the concern of the board or the commission, that they would be willing to work those types of details out in advance as part of the.
One last question for staff. As far as our local festival, Westfest, what are the hours of operation for Westfest, and what's the ordinance on that?
Mr. Chair, Westfest typically is afternoon only, and it doesn't go past dusk, and so
it's just to put a time frame, because
but I think last year it was 12 to 8. Yeah. Mr. Chair, before we leave off of noise ordinances, I want to make sure if anybody ever calls ASO with a noise complaint and ASO says to you that they can't enforce it or they won't enforce it, I want you to please notify City Hall, because we have spent a lot of time, a lot of money negotiating with ASO to ensure that they will enforce that noise ordinance. I've worked with the county commission on this. I've worked with sheriff on this. So there should, at no time ever, should ASO say to anybody that they can't enforce a law inside the city of Newberry. And if someone breaks that rule, then they would potentially forfeit their opportunity to come back and contract with the county in the future. For instance, the Alachua County Fair, again a separate entity from the Alachua County government, just lost their ability to contract with the Alachua County government because they didn't follow some of the rules. And so the Alachua County Commission said, you won't follow the rules, we don't want to work with you anymore because you're not following the rules. So that would ultimately be one way that could end up going. If someone comes and they won't follow the ordinances, that would potentially be their last time coming.
Anything else from staff?
No, sir.
Any other questions for staff? All right, at this point, now, we'll open the floor up for public comments, and everybody will have 3 minutes. If anybody's here to speak, if you want to.
Hey, I'm Jennifer Wallace. I just have a question about the buffer. Why is it only on the north side and not on the west side? Because the residential housing actually starts like halfway through that side. So there's areas that seem like the houses are going to be exposed without a buffer there. Because right now there's a fence and there's some open area, but all that's going to be potentially exposed and open.
I know one of my recommendations is going on that 50-foot buffer is for the northern property line as well as the western property line. I've got a list of recommendations.
Right. Okay.
As well. So, because I saw the same thing.
Because there's several houses that would be exposed to nothing.
Correct.
There.
So,
Okay. So no answer. Okay.
Definitely concur. All right, is there,
No, hang on one second, Mr. Chair. What that means is that what we're here to do tonight is listen to all of y'all's concerns, and we're going to send those to the commission and say, this is what we heard the county staff present, this is what we heard the city staff present. So there's no answer. This is exactly what this process is intended to reveal. It's all the things that we can put all of our heads together and we can send them all to the city commission. Yes, absolutely. That's exactly what this process is intended to do, is hear everybody's concerns and do what we can to mitigate those concerns.
we've all got concerns. All right, next.
How you doing? My name's Sammy Wright. I live about 200 feet from the Equestrian Center right now, behind it. Just bought a house there a year and a half ago. I was under the impression that there was going to be an agricultural center coming in there and not a fairgrounds or a concert center or food events or festivals, banquets, trade shows, and so on, as it states in number 3, which was changed and added to the permit. That's my concerns. Another concern is, I believe the gentleman back here said that in the process you have the ability to change, has the ability to change 232 and move that from what he was saying, because that's included in the development of the process. If they wish to change that road, they can. I believe that's what he was saying. Is that?
Mr. Chair, not change the road, change the entry points on the road from
So
the existing
that doesn't
property.
mean that you change the road? If you change the entry points?
Not change the direction of the road. It would either change or add where they access the road, the existing road. But the road itself would not be redirected.
Okay, so if we change the road, entrance to the road, how do we not change the access to the road? So how do we not, I don't understand how
The
you would
entrance
change
from
the entrance to
property-
that road.
Yes, sir. The entrance from the subject parcel onto the side road, not change the entrance of the road onto State Road 26.
So from 26, 232 would not be affected whatsoever, is what you're saying?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, it won't impact the egress or, the comings and going of the citizens that live in that neighborhood. It's only, they're talking about changing the access points to the actual Canterbury property. That might move, that might shift. That's what they're in reference to.
So they're saying cause more confusion on 26 by adding another entrance into 26 to Canterbury, correct? Is that what we're saying? I mean,
I don't see it as that, no, sir.
that's my concern. First of all, I'd like to thank Alachua County for even coming and considering coming to Newberry. I think it's a great thing. But the new proposal on number 2 just opens it up for them to bring anything that they want out there. Now, I don't know if y'all familiar with Dothan, Alabama, and the Peanut Festival. I lived there for 10 years, and in a matter of moving the Peanut Festival in the first year, there was 400 noise complaints, and they moved it 5 miles outside of Dothan, Alabama, of the city, because they said there would be no noise. It caused more problems than it did benefit to the city, and confusion. So my concerns is number 2, where we're going to open it up for them to put any event that they want out there instead of an agricultural event. And number 2 on page 3 allows that in the statement, in the wording. And
Mr. Chair, I just wanted to reiterate that none of the issues that are listed on number 2 are things that have not already been permissible at the existing facility. They've gone on in the existing facility.
but not at the, I guess, range that you're looking to put there. We're looking to do a 160 square foot area there. We're looking to put how many seating as far as I guess, a center to build there, from my understanding,
No, sir,
on the facility?
and I want to be respectful of your time, because I know we've
Okay.
a little back and forth here, so you're over time, but we can work with that.
Oh, I'm sorry.
The IFAS Extension Office and IFAS Convention Center will be just east of that on another 5 acres, and the plan there is for it to also have its own entranceway. So I think the point that Mr. Thomas is trying to make is that is your concern could happen there tomorrow, because right now all of those a carnival, a fair, any of those kinds of things could happen there because it's already permitted to happen there.
But not at the scale that we're talking about putting there.
Well, sir, scale is determined by the size of the campus. I mean, I can't say that any clearer. I mean, I can't fit an 80 acre fair on a 38 acre campus that already has, I don't know, 10 acres covered in existing structures. So it just can't. It can't.
I respect that.
It can't. So that's my point, is that, right now, Newberry Oaks actually stands in more danger if this doesn't go through, because the Alachua County Fair is homeless. Right now, they don't have a place to go, and they could go to Mr. Wiesman and say, we don't have a home, and somehow we think we can cut our fare less by more than half and still make money. And Mr. Wiesman has every legal right to sign a contract with them. So right now, Alachua County does not have a relationship with Alachua County Fair. They do not intend to have a relationship in the near future. So Newberry Oaks' best bet right now is actually to go with Alachua County government.
Thank you.
Alachua County Fair would actually have to go to Alachua County to get permission to use the site, and they've already separated. They've already, gone their own ways.
So wouldn't they have to go to Newberry to get permission?
No, sir, and I want to make sure, pardon, Mr. Chair, we don't usually take questions from the audience. Mr. Wiesman already has his rights to do what he wants to do out there. So he's already grandfathered in, he's got his permitted uses. So as long as he falls within those permitted uses, he can do what he wants to, and that would already fall into a permitted use. Fairs, carnivals, they've already happened out there, so he would not have to come back in front of us to ask again. So this actually cleans that language up quite a bit. That's an excellent question.
Yes, please state your name.
Alan Evans. How you doing? We're in the same position as Newberry Oaks, but we're on the east side of Canterbury. I'd also like to say we've been there for 30 years, living out just east in the same situation that Newberry Oaks is in now, which is a pretty new community. We've never seen any complaints noise-wise for what's going on as is, okay? And I would like to see the scale kept as is, just like everybody else. But I'd also like to make a point that kind of adds to your point, and that's that right now the land is commercial zoned. And so if this acquisition doesn't happen, one of the things that keeps me up at night is what's going to happen if it doesn't stay Canterbury. Private industry could come in. I don't know what the limitations are, but I mean, I could see the rear end of a bunch of loading docks and trucks coming in and out 24/7, you know, and the city can't do anything about it because it's already zoned, and the owner has a right to sell it, and whoever buys it is going to have a right to use it in that situation as they like. And so you talk about noise and lights and things that would bother me and concern me with my land value. That's what keeps me up at night, is if this acquisition doesn't happen. Because I know we've lived there long enough to tell you that it's been a really nice community-oriented center. My kids grew up there going to all the events, and we actually do put on horse shows there. I'll tell you, we do business there, but we put shows on from Jacksonville to Ocala. But we also have land, which to me has more than a monetary value that's next to it. We're invested in this, and I've been building this little 20-acre horse farm for almost 30 years. I mean, you look at the distribution center in Alachua and look at the number of semi-trucks that are coming in and out constantly, and I know people who own... Yeah, I'm sorry. I got you. You know, I know people who own land out in that area that have just been devastated by it with property values. And so the other thing I'd like to point out is with what's being proposed, you're going to have a commission in the county commission, which are elected officials, which we are constituents of, as you know, living in the county, that if we have a problem, we can go to and say, hey, there's a problem here, and they're elected officials. They're going to go to their staff and they're going to say, here's a problem. We need more PD. We need whatever. We need to look at traffic situations, and they're going to try their best to address this. If it goes commercial or into private industry, you know, most of these complaints I think are going to fall on deaf ears, and so I just wanted to kind of point that out. I understand everybody's concerns, but I would, if I can put anybody's mind at ease, to tell you we've been there a lot longer than anybody in Newberry Oaks. Now, I know there's people in Newberry Oaks that are longtime Newberry residents, but I went to elementary school here, and I'd also like to say that, you know, I've seen staff, I've seen, you know, commissioners come and go, and this is a good group of people, and I think you guys, from this meeting to the other meetings, are trying to look out for our property value more than anything else, and so I appreciate that. Again, I can't, in being involved with Canterbury, if in the 30 years, okay, in the 30 years, I'm just going to say, I probably could count the amount of complaints on one hand and have fingers left over, okay? There really hasn't been any with it as is, okay? So, with that said, if anybody doesn't have any questions, I just want to make those points.
Thank you.
Anybody else for that? Can you state your name, please, sir?
Lee Pinkston, retired citizen. And I just want to thank y'all, Ms. Chair, members of the board, for considering the application tonight. And I also want to say thank you to the mayor as well as the commission for coming to the county about possibly coming to the fairgrounds, to the Canterbury about the fairgrounds. Because the great thing about it is the facility's there. It's an opportunity for Newberry to keep the Canterbury as is. And that little piece of what makes Newberry special will stay that way. Obviously, you know, the last action that took place while I was commissioner, matter of fact, the last thing that we did was signing the deal with Mr. Weisman to go ahead and enter into this contract. So, what is great about this is the agriculture. This would be absolutely fantastic for the agricultural community. Most people don't realize it. It's either the second or third economic driver in the county. The kids that go there, I mean, if you haven't been to the youth fair, you need to go. It is just absolutely impressive to see what those children do, young adults, and the amount of support that they get from their families, the community. It really is an asset, and they deserve something that Canterbury offers, which will be a top-notch facility. And the county has to put minimum amount of dollars in it, because if we had to build all that, it would be very, very expensive. So it's an opportunity for that from that standpoint. Now I understand that, you know, obviously the neighbors are concerned. It's a change, even though most of the things that can happen there already have happened in the past. What is transpiring now is something that is different, and obviously, you know, that causes alarms to go off. But I can tell you that, as a former board member, when we were meeting about this, one of our concerns was to make sure that we made that we were good neighbors as a county, and so it was to enter into a dialogue with the city of Newberry about how can we make this work out of considerations for the neighbors, because they deserve it. They're the county citizens as well. So you know, I would hope that they would get up and say what the concerns are, so that the county and the city can have that discussion about what is possible. It may not all be possible, but certainly the suggestion about helping the people on the western portion where there is no proposed buffer. That's not prohibitively expensive. Why not? It makes good neighbors. You know, and you know, by all means, have the discussion about the time. That's how you do. That's really the most effective way of handling the noise situation. So, you know, have those discussions, because this is an opportunity for the city of Newberry to come through with a win, and obviously the county too, and the agricultural community, and they deserve that. Thank you very much. I appreciate it, and I've tried to stay on time. So, thank you.
All right. Next citizen. Could state your name, please, sir.
Yes, sir. My name is Michael Grant. So I've been told by my mother and my wife that I talk really fast and sometimes go off on tangents, so I will try and go slow and in order. Is that better? Yeah. Okay. So the first thing that I want to say tonight to this process with the newspaper, this has been a little bit scary it's been very inflammatory. I've seen neighbors bicker against neighbors that normally would never have done so. And so I just want to express a little bit of gratitude tonight to Mr. Mayor and Ms. Peebles. Through the couple of days that article was floating around, I got some straight answers to straight up questions. So I really appreciate that. That leads me into the next part where Mr. Urchid actually hit the nail right on the head. It is the terminology that is inflammatory. And I think that's probably what is still actually fueling the fire. I understand that that may be difficult to change. I'd like it to. So if we can, that would be great. I have no objections to events being held at Canterbury at all. I live there, and I'd like to go see them. You know. So the large concern that I have is that the fairgrounds. I mean, it's just, well, excuse me, as stated, like I said, going off on tangents, I'm trying to go in order here. As stated, intended use as Alachua County Fairgrounds means to me, get out now while you can. That's what it means. And between the mine blasting, which I have been told by numerous people, there's nothing we can do about it, all the way up to the state legislature, I have a hard time living out here. I came out here because it was quiet and it was away from people, because I've been in places where I need to be away from everything. That's just the way it is. So my questions I suppose that I have is, was there a neighborhood around when the other carnivals were here? That was that close as it is now? And also, why can't we Mr. Mayor, you used the word we can't discriminate, which I agree with. Why can't we specify actually which events come through? Why can't there be an application process? And I can take the answer offline and everything. But again, thank you for the help to kind of defuel the flames that were burning. Ms. Peebles, if you're still here, thank you again. So that's it for me.
Thank you. Any other citizens want to come up and tell us your concerns?
Hello, my name is Brent Gottschalk. My son is looking to buy a house in Newberry Oaks, so that's my interest in this. And so I looked up your November 5th, 2018 meeting when the interlocal agreement between the county and the city was being discussed. And in that, the city, I guess the city manager, had recommended about 15 requirements. And numbers 10 through 15, if I can just kind of walk you through those, and I've heard y'all reference some of those tonight. Number 10 had to do with chain link fencing along the site perimeter with black vinyl coating. Number 11 was a 50-foot wide, high-density vegetative buffer along the northern property line and the western property line adjacent to the residential development. And it was as described with the canopy trees and the understory and all of that. Again, for that specifically, now there's just a buffer on the north side, not the west side, so I think that's a concern. Number 12 was to limit the area where the carnival or midway activities are conducted to the south of the main arena adjacent to State Road 26. It sounds to me like that's probably not in the PD limitations right now. And then it had specific hours of operation, as has been discussed by multiple people. And then it also had limiting lighting to reduce adverse impacts on the residential areas north and west of the site, and the noise limitations with city ordinances. And so those are my questions, those are my thoughts in terms of, are those going to be requirements of the PD, or are those things that are going to be worked out at some other point? I know I've heard some of the board members say they have similar concerns about some of those things. Another issue that hasn't been discussed, but I heard it on the last agenda item, the height of the buildings. Again, I don't know what your requirements are, but are there limitations on how tall buildings could be built on this property? So those are just the thoughts and concerns I had that I hope are taken into account with this or through some other mechanism. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Any other citizens would like to speak?
Hi, my name is Katie Stakely. I'm not a public speaker. I did move to Newberry 6, almost 7 years ago because of the small town feel. I lived in Southwest Gainesville, I lived in Archer, and Newberry felt like a place where I wanted to call home. We chose Newberry Oaks because of the equestrian center partly. It was across the street. I could live in a neighborhood and walk out my front door and still see horses and still see open field. Now I see a street across the road from me, but that's okay. I still know it's there, and I can still hear the horses. I see them when I'm coming in. However, I do have safety concerns for my young children when it comes to opening up this site for potential fairgrounds. We already attract quite the attention on Halloween, and now we have parking spaces across the street from my house for people to come and park so they can trick or treat in my neighborhood. So I have to worry about, you know, the children that live in the neighborhood as well as the people that are coming from the outside. We have had circuses in this neighborhood since I've lived there. I can probably count about 6 in the 6 to 7 years that I've lived there. They are very small circuses, as like the Blue Jeans and Black Tie event. It's limited to the covered arena, so it's not out in the grass. It's not out in the back. It's limited to that area. I think we can put some sort of specificity into when people apply to bring their events to it. You said, can we put some sort of limitation or something? Can we limit a ride or attraction size where we say, sure, a carousel is appropriate, but maybe not a Ferris wheel. Maybe not something that's going to reach up and be visible from all over the neighborhood. I think that was it. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any other citizens that wish to speak? Yes, sir.
Good evening.
Could you state your name, please, sir?
My name is Gary Alt. I just moved into Newberry Oaks here about 6-7 months ago. My backyard is the Canterbury Farms, and that's one of the main reasons I moved. I'm originally from a small community town, it's an agriculture town. I've lived most of my adult life in concrete jungles, and I've watched how urban sprawl has moved and devoured good communities. I also would like to find out, a gentleman mentioned something about trees as a buffer here. Now, in the event that, you know, individuals not responsible will cause some type of damage or trees uprooting fences, who is going to be responsible for the repairs? Is it going to be the homeowners, or is it going to be arbitrary, or agreement between city council or county or the residents? And I become concerned the noise ordinance, also the lighting. That's another main thing. Being out in the country, you like it being dark, so you can look and see the stars. In big cities, you can't see stuff. You miss a lot of history stuff. I missed Halley's Comet out in California because you couldn't see it because of the lights and everything. I was from the cities. So I would like to see limit on fairgrounds. My first impression is loud noises, because I remember fairgrounds when I was a kid out in the county, they were stuck out in the middle of the boonies. And they were not affecting anyone. They were by no residential areas. So if agriculture, I can deal with that. I enjoy looking at my back door, drinking my coffee, and watching people exercising their horses, getting ready for the horse show. It's a very tranquil feeling. So I'll be interested in kind of follow up on it. I hadn't had time to prepare for this, but I'd kind of like to follow up on it because I'm the new neighbor here, and I'm very concerned with it. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, sir. All right. Any other citizens would like to speak?
Good evening, Mackenzie Burkett. My husband and I recently moved to Newberry Oaks in the last year or so, just for the same reasons. We wanted to get out of the city, we wanted a place to raise our future family. It's our first home as a married couple, and had I known that this would be going on, I very well would have reconsidered my choice to purchase in Newberry Oaks. I love my neighborhood, I love my neighbors, but I don't love the thought of a concert, rock concert, country concert, fair, festival. Agriculture is one thing, but it feels like the width and breadth of all the things that could be coming far outweighs the benefit of having agriculture in our backyards. I am very concerned with the traffic. Newberry Road is already a nightmare driving into town. I don't want that driving out of town too. I work at UF and the traffic down there is scary. I really don't want that when I get back home into Newberry where things slow down and suddenly cars are backed up for a mile down Newberry because everyone's trying to turn into a one-lane road into an event center. That is also one of the primary access points for our neighborhood. Hundreds of my neighbors go in through that one entrance to get to their homes. And now they're going to be stuck behind a line of cars also trying to get to that one entrance. That is scary. The safety of my neighbors' kids in our already congested and speed-ridden streets is terrifying to me. The fact that people of any walk of life could just walk right into my neighborhood from an event center that borders it, that's being stopped by a row of trees, that doesn't give me a lot of security. And that those trees might reach maturity in 5 years doesn't give me a lot of sound ordinance now. So I would like to see you guys consider this event venue like it was going to be in your backyard. If your 50 feet was from your fence line to any one of these number of events, how would you feel about your 2-year-old trying to sleep at 7 p.m. when the concert goes till 10? Or maybe they've asked for an extended use permit and they're going till midnight. There's just a lot of concerns here, and it doesn't feel like us as a neighborhood are being considered for all of them. I think it's great. I do want the county to be this owner versus someone who's going to bring in tractor trailers or put a big building out there and not listen to us. I do feel like the county wants to be a good neighbor, but I don't know that all the caveats and all the nuances are really being considered. Safety, noise, lights, traffic, all of that has been said, but has it really been thought about from your own perspective if it was your backyard? And that's all I ask, and I look forward to hearing more about this going forward. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Any other citizens? There being no more citizens, would the applicant like to come back up and you can cross-examine?
Good evening. Mr. Chair, Mayor, members of the Planning Commission. I wanted to address Michelle Lieberman, Alachua County Manager. A few things that were brought up both by the citizens and by the board itself. So first of all, the county has estimated that our investment into this location, when you consider the purchase of the property, the construction of the extension office on the adjacent parcel, and the upgrades to this facility, is around $10 million of investment into the city of Newberry. That investment includes, as I said, upgrading these facilities, one, to make them ADA accessible, but when you upgrade facilities, that allows also the opportunity for upgraded equipment, upgraded sound, upgraded lighting. Those things will have a lot to be able to attenuate those issues that you're addressing. A lot of that, the newer equipment has that ability as far as attenuating noise and light. One of the things that was not addressed as far as the site, the county, as part of its agreement with Mr. Weisman, is required to move the drainage. Right now, the drainage is located on another parcel that Mr. Weisman owns. We have got to relocate that drainage on site. That already is going to take up more of that parcel. So it is even more limited as far as the acreage, what we're talking about as far as the use is concerned, because we've got to hold that drainage now on site.
Hang on a second, sir. I just want to reiterate, we don't usually allow, but I think it is an important point that Ms. Lieberman is making, and I'll see if I can reiterate it and make sure that everybody is clear. What we're talking about here is a 38-acre campus that's already covered. I'm estimating about 10 acres of it in facilities. Right now, Mr. Wiesman is able to use off-site water drainage, stormwater, that the county did not purchase that land. So they're going to have to bring the stormwater onto that site, which is going to take up some amount of acreage on Canterbury site again. So the ability, so it just got smaller. So the ability for events and the size of events just shrunk again, is what she's saying. So that stormwater will have to come onto Canterbury's campus, which will make it more difficult and even less feasible for things like the Alachua County Fair with this scope to ever be at Canterbury. Hope I made that. Did I get that right?
Yeah, the point, yes, Mr. Mayor, the point is that that is going to take up some of the site by moving that drainage onto the location. With regard to things such as noise, you know, I know we've talked about things such as hours of operation. What I would ask is that we not limit more than what's there today. If the county can meet the standard, then we should be able to operate. As long as we're meeting that standard, whether that's at 7 o'clock p.m. or 9 o'clock p.m., my concern becomes the more we limit the ability to use the facility, the less that we can support this facility. This facility does need to, we need to be able to rent it, we need to be able to use the facility. More than just the equestrian period, there's kind of a season for that where most of those happen. We want to see this as something that is a benefit to the community year-round. So hours of operation, if we could, I would just ask that if we can meet the standards, that be what the key is. The traffic, security, safety, the way the county operates, and this is how it operates its current fairground site, we have facilities use plan. What is required of an applicant who's going to use, so for the current fairground site, this would be apply the same here. We send them to the sheriff's office. They have to review what the event is, how many people are estimated at the event, what type of event it is, and the sheriff's office determines whether they need or how many they need of deputies for traffic control, deputies for safety and security of the site. We also require applicants to go to the Alachua County Fire Rescue to determine if they need to have on-site fire rescue, what type of plans they need to have in place for safety issues for that. All those things must be met before we approve applicants for the use of the facilities. Those things are not going to change, and those are all at the cost of the applicant who's using the facility over and above whatever that rental is. So those things will not change. And lastly, I did want to address the concern with the language. We do have some very tight timelines with regard to our contract and some additional costs if we don't meet those timelines. I would ask for this evening, hopefully we will receive a recommendation of approval going to the city, but if we could, if there is a concern with the language, if the motion could simply recommend approval with removal of any language that is inconsistent with the newly permitted uses. I'm available for any questions if you have any.
Anybody have anything?
You go first.
Okay. Manager Lieberman, we're honored to have you here with us today, and on behalf of the city and the Planning and Zoning Commission, I applaud you for making this move to come to Newberry. My question is, do you anticipate any big changes to the operation that we have at Canterbury now with the horse shows and the once a year, once in a while, black tie and blue jeans thing? Do you anticipate anything significantly is going to change as it changes ownership from Mr. Wiesman to the county?
Mr. Chair, I mean, I can never say what events will come or will not come in the future because you know, this is a very long-term partnership with the city of Newberry. We don't plan to leave the city of Newberry once we make this investment. So I don't want to say that something will never happen. I can tell you that we are working with the people who are currently operating the facility. We want to maintain that. That's one of the reasons why we've decided not to call it the Alachua County Fairgrounds. We've decided to call it the Alachua County Agricultural and Equestrian Event Center. We thought it was crucial to keep its identity. You know, part of its identity, the equestrian facility. We know that there's a timeline for that, that there will be a lot of events booked for the equestrian side during that. I believe it's like January to April or October to April. There's a time frame there where there are primary events. Other than the youth fair in March, we know that those areas are mostly going to be equestrian events. It's primarily going to be an agricultural and equestrian venue, but I don't want to say that something else will never come.
Just for the people in this room that are concerned that some things are going to change, they bought around a nice equestrian show place and they're happy there. That place was there before they bought their home. Can you give them some reassurance that you're not anticipating any big changes, that those same people that have been coming there for a long time to do their horse shows will probably continue to work with the county, or are you going to go another direction?
Well, Mr. Chair, no, we do not intend to go in another direction as far as the facility being accommodating for the majority of the equestrian events that come there. The uses that have been there historically, I would say that those are a likely possibility in the future, because those are people who are likely to come back to use the facility. With regard to the carnival and the concerns with the carnival, our board has given us direction to work with the Watermelon Festival, and that's where they want us to bring that event so that the county still has something similar. But we know that the acreage is not what it was in our Gainesville location.
Mr. Chair, can I before you go on, Mr. Conrad, and I just want to make sure, because this is the point that the Gainesville Sun messed up and caused so much confusion. When you say, and the county commission says that they want to direct to see if the county can work with Newberry Watermelon Festival, that is in no way implying that they are asking the Newberry Watermelon Festival to grow to the size of the Alachua County Fair. You want to partner with the Newberry Watermelon Festival. You want to help them make sure that they have the carnival pieces that they used to have, that they've lost over the last few years, but it is not an implication that you want to help them grow to bigger than they are. They're a small board. They don't have the manpower to grow. They're not interested in growing larger. They very much want to have a carnival piece back. That was how they made their money as well. So I think it's a great offer that the county is making. It was really, it was a nice gesture that unfortunately the Gainesville Sun just got just enough wrong to get everybody in Newberry Oaks confused and upset again. And so we've tried for the last, I don't know how many weeks now, to sort of roll that misunderstanding back. But I appreciate the idea, and I look forward to seeing if we can make that partnership work. So I just want to make sure, again, to clarify, the county is just seeking to help Newberry Watermelon Festival grow to the size it used to always be, not the Alachua County Fair size, which, again, geographically, it can't fit there anyway.
Yeah, and that's pretty much what I want to say too. And I want the people in the room to understand we have the county manager here, and in my mind, I don't see any big changes in Canterbury unless you tell me we're going in a different direction. But I don't hear that from you. It sounds like they're going to have the same Canterbury. Now it's going to have a different name, but they're going to have horror shows and once in a while an event that they have had for the years that they've lived in Newberry Oaks. Is that correct?
Yes, Mr. Chair and Mr. Mayor, and I would, and I would hope that we could bring even more agricultural events with an upgraded and improved facility than come here currently during those times when it's not being used for equestrian events as well.
Well, that's should make also, this is approved, being able to look out their windows and see a nicer facility out there. Yes, ma'am?
No, you're fine.
I have a question. I tried to do, because I know people have been concerned, and I too moved to Newberry because I wanted a small town. I grew up in a small town. I also grew up in a place where we had an auditorium that was 2 miles away from my house that we listened to a Ted Nugent concert on the front porch. So I understand the concerns a facility like this could have. We've seen this come out with some of the new events we've had at the town center, and I live in Newtown. I've been able to hear them. We've had these concerns over Gatorback and people saying that they could hear the races from their houses miles away from the facility as it is. I know that I think it was a September meeting of the county commission. I'm not exactly sure. There was a business plan discussed with the Florida Agricultural Center. Obviously, it's not the most relevant now because it included information about having a fairground on the site, the revenues and comparisons. It did talk about some of the performances, events, and trade shows that had already expressed interest in bringing their business to a new upgraded Canterbury, which, I mean, that's exciting, and it should be exciting for Newberry because we've seen it decline over the years. I know we've talked about them being on scale with what's going on there, but I think some of the people here now want assurances that we're not looking at, what was it called, like Fest, or maybe we will have Fest there, or some other multi-day concert events that are currently going on the other side of the county out in Canterbury, and how that will affect them.
Mr. Chair, again, I can't stand here and say the county will not have this event ever in its future, or will never have this type of event ever in its future. I don't have a crystal ball. We have a public use policy. We don't discriminate against the types of uses, because that in and of itself can become an issue if we say your group gets to come but your group doesn't. We utilize regulation and policies and rules to make sure that everybody is on the same playing field, so to speak, regardless of whether they're a rodeo, a circus, a carnival, a horse show. As long as everybody is on the same playing field as far as what rules they have to follow, I think that is what the key is to making sure that the neighbors are not unhappy with the situation. The city will have some uses of the facility as part of, the agreement that the county has with the city. I don't know what plans they may have as far as events to bring there, but again, I think the point is, as long as everybody follows the same set of rules and regulations, that it keeps all of that in check.
And I have been to a lot of these city commission meetings where you have been there and other members of the county have, and I do think that the county, I know for everyone here and out there, I do think the county really intends to be good neighbors to us, to our community. I know you have concerns, but I really appreciate how the county has been regarding this whole issue. And I just want to make sure for the citizens here from Newberry Oaks, make sure you attend the city commission meeting to make sure our city commission also will be good neighbors to you, because they need to hear your concerns too.
Now that hearing from, well, first off, thank you, Manager Lieberman, for coming out tonight to address us on this matter, and to bring up that important topic, that drainage move decreases the acreage. I mean, all in all, listen, everybody knows my story. I'm from Miami. I'm a Miami born and raised. I had Ultra Festival right across the street every year for 3 days straight in front of me till 1 in the morning. And I was so happy to hear that it got kicked out, but it got moved to Virginia Key, so it's not even that far. Now I deal with rodeos at Town and Country, down and Countryway, and I can hear it from my house in Newberry Oaks. I mean, in Oakview Village. I also have kids that need to go to sleep, and everything that we've been throwing so far of hours of operation, noise ordinance, buffer, lights. Now we're even decreasing the possibility of the size because of the drainage. I think it will be a revolutionary carnival that would have to come into play, that would have no noise, be noise ordinance, no lights. I mean, I personally wouldn't even want to go to that carnival. I mean, the Watermelon Festival, if you guys haven't gone, is a pretty awesome festival. It's during the day. Kids love it. Nobody seems to have any issues. We have great vendors there, and it ends at a reasonable time. I think as long as we figure out a way that we can, without defeating, and kicking people to the curb, but also making in a sense of, listen, we're trying to attract a certain group here. I don't want this to become commercialized, privatized. We can have a trucking center here, and yes, it'll bring more jobs, but yet it's going to destroy your homes. I would rather have horses there. I would rather have, the what do you guys? I'm not from the country. The blue tie, blue jeans. Yeah,
Come on, man. It's been a year.
Listen, bro, I am not there yet, dude. I am not there yet. But I don't want what I moved up here for. I don't want Miami coming up here. Forgive me, my Dade people that watch this. I don't want Miami coming up here. That's the last thing I want. I want agriculture. I came here to keep my family quiet in a safe community where there is agriculture, where it is nice to look in your backyard and see horses and trees. Sir, you with the issue with the claims thing, I work in claims. I can help you with that issue. However, is there a way that the county and us can get together and format a way of, it's not excluding certain people, but make it understandable, like, listen, you're not going to bring your bar here, you're not going to bring your concert here, because it's just, we're really attracting X, Y, and Z, and it's not saying we're attracting it, it's according to the noise ordinance, according to the hours of operation, this is what we're attracting. Do you think the county would be, okay with that? I mean, is that something?
Mr. Chair, can I try to, because I know you've tried to answer that a couple of times now, so I'll give it a shot. The issue here is that there is all we can legally do is set a list of standards that everybody has to adhere to.
Right.
There is no way that we can try to discriminate, and I'm an English teacher, between a festival, a fair, a carnival, and say this one no, this one yes. I tried. So all we can say is, here's our list of standards. Anybody that comes here has to adhere to this list of standards, but we cannot write into an ordinance something that says this group of people are not allowed to come. So we say these are the criteria. If you fit in this criteria, you get to come. If you don't fit in this criteria, you don't get to come. Right. But that's as far as government can go without being charged with discrimination, saying, well, you don't like us, so you're not letting us come, but you let that guy come. So you're a lawyer, so I know you can do it more articulately, but you had tried a couple times, so I thought I would give it a shot. Is that basically, did I get that right?
In my brief run in insurance, we can have ineligible, not ineligible, you can't, you can't say fairgrounds, you can't say this, but you can say, well, this is an ineligible thing to have at the park or at the fairgrounds. This is an ineligible item, this is an ineligible item, or whatever. We can have ineligible things stated. Is that a correct statement?
It's if you're within the standards. If you're not within those standards, then you're ineligible. Right.
Yeah, see, even bringing a concert in, if a concert promoter wanted to pay the county to have a concert there, they're still limited to a sound ordinance.
Right.
Okay? They have the same sound ordinance requirements that Black Tie Blue Jeans would have, or a horse festival, a horse show. Everybody is subjected to the same rules. So regardless of the event, everybody's subjected to the same rules.
So, Mr. Chair, if I could probably give an example of what the concern would be. So, for example, if the condition were no concerts, you shall not have a concert on that site, and Black Tie and Blue Jeans wanted to have a band, how am I going to explain that they get to have a band, but the country music band who wants to come and actually have their show there, they can't be there, but we allowed the band to come for the other event? So that's where those types of issues become concerning, because we don't want to be put in a position, or you've got the jazz band, but then you tell the country band, no, you can't come. Well, is it because I'm a country band and they were a jazz band? That's not what we're saying, but that's what the argument becomes. So that's what we're trying to avoid. When you start putting those limitations, then you're saying not only can that not come as an event, but don't have that as a component in any event. So it becomes more and more difficult.
Now, with the county, wouldn't they have to apply for a permit? Like Dave Matthews Band can't just show up and say, hey, we're going to throw a really awesome rock concert, which I would probably attend. But the likelihood is they would have to apply for a permit versus this Black Tie Blue Jean event, country fundraiser.
So, and I would have to check because,
Even Black Tie had to go to the property owner for permission to use it. Yeah, we never just set up. We always have to get permission.
and that's what I wanted to verify. So currently now, when we're in the city of Gainesville, those things that require a city permit to do, we tell them you still have to go get your city permit to do those things on our property. So to the extent that there are city requirements for somebody coming into the location, they would still have to comply with whatever those requirements would be. So noise ordinance being one, but if there's some kind of, I know, for example, and I think somebody mentioned an after hours permit or something. So we couldn't just allow them to do something that the city doesn't allow. City of Gainesville, for example, has a noise permit that they use, and people have to go and, if they're going to, if that permit's required, and get that permit from the city. It would be the same here if they were going to go extended hours, for example. So those things still apply.
And just for clarification, Naeem, there have been events held in Newberry that have requested after hours special noise ordinance exemptions, and those events get complained on every year. But it still happens. So I mean, we do. The city does have, and Black Tie and Blue Jeans is a political party fundraiser. It's not a country western thing.
And that's my other question for the staff is, what's the difference between a fundraiser concert versus a for-profit, in a sense, concert? If we're fundraising for 4-H agriculture, and like I said, Dave Matthews shows up, they're not here for charity.
So I what you're getting into is issues of speech, and we say that the same activity, if it's one type, is okay, and that activity, if it's another type, is not, then we're getting into, I'm talking more, but we're getting into issues of First Amendment speech. And so it's very difficult to tell one group they're okay and another group they're not, based on what it is they're saying, essentially.
I'm going to add a couple of things here just so I can at least say something. My concerns for our residents that are adjacent to the Canterbury property, obviously the north and the west, and like has been stated, they're residents of Alachua County. I've heard that the county is willing, or was before it was listed. But just to satisfy some of our residents' concerns, you know, just in order to limit any of the negative impacts of any event going on there. I know we've already talked about the 50-foot high-density vegetated buffer. You know, I'd like to know if the county is willing to go ahead and put that on the western border as well as the northern. As been mentioned, you know, limit the area where a carnival or midway or any of those activities outside of what happens in the equestrian center itself. You know, limit all of that to the south side of the main arena, you know, over by State Road 26, if the county's willing to consider something like that. Limit the evening operating hours to 10 p.m. on Sunday through Thursday, and no later than midnight, maybe even 11 o'clock on Friday and Saturdays. It's been mentioned, can limit the lighting so that no lighting adversely impacts the residential areas to the north or the west of the property. And you hit on that when we talked about the upgraded lighting. And again, hitting on the noise, you know, just limit the noise generated by the activities so that the site and activities comply with city and county ordinances, whichever is the greater of the two. You know, that's kind of where I see our issues, and because the citizens are Alachua County residents, I wouldn't see that's really, you know, asking too much of the county to consider. But I just wanted to get that in.
And, Mr. Chair, if I might, obviously I can't make that statement for the county today. You know, there are some things we would have to go back and look, particularly when on the buffer side. We need to make sure with the drainage and everything. I don't want to speak out of turn on those issues and what that may require. But I certainly think I know we are willing to consider all of these as a way to, you know, make the neighbors feel better about the project, and I will certainly take these back to our staff as well.
Yes, sir.
I just want to let folks know, you may not, but 4-H has a building. Is it 4-H or FFA? 4-H.
It's actually the Alachua County Youth Fair has the pole barns.
Okay, so they have pole barns on the existing fairground site that the county has agreed to move. So part of why Ms. Lieber can't answer these questions is they've still got some figuring out to do of where to put these other buildings on here, where to put the stormwater on here, and so, but I can say, and I hope that this process is showing that the county has been more than willing to sit down and work with us on every single concern that has been expressed by the board and has been expressed by the citizens. It's a long, slow process. I understand that it's frustrating, especially when media messes things up. But we're here having this dialogue back and forth so that we can have these kinds of considerations. Not once has the county ever said to me, that one's not possible. I mean, the only thing that they've said is not possible is these limitations on, the Watermelon Festival has a concert aspect too, so. And, you get into all we can do is set a standard, then everybody has to apply to that standard, and that's kind of where we are. So, just want to make sure everybody. That's again is going to reduce the size of the campus when those Alachua County Youth Fair pole barns show up as well, because they're very attached. I've talked to them; they really can't be other pole barns. It has to be those pole barns.
Bill, did you have something?
Not at the moment. I had some, but I got I'm getting old.
All right. Does anybody else have anything for the applicant at this time? Yes, sir.
All this discussion about permitting and everything, it's great to have Michelle here so we can share some of this stuff, but I don't think we can solve this as part of planning and zoning, but I do see a memorandum of understanding or an interlocal between the city and the county about how people are gonna get special permits, and who's gonna do what's gonna come from the city, what's gonna come from the county. And that's something that has to be done, but not in planning and zoning. I think we need to work that out. We need to get this thing cited here and figure out the planning and zoning and stuff, but there still obviously is a lot more staff work that needs to go into what's gonna be a very complicated relationship of a county operating inside of a city that operates inside of a county, and we have to sort out some of the relationships which our staffs can do that.
Yes, sir.
Anything else? Okay. Staff have anything that they would like to present or offer as all right. Anybody have any questions of staff?
I have a comment. Is this our deliberations now? Is that where we're?
No, we're heading there though.
Okay, I'll wait till.
All right. Does the applicant have any final arguments? Anything else that you would like to say?
Mr. Chair, I think we've had a wonderful dialogue here tonight. We'll continue to work with the city and the county and make sure that we address everything that's been discussed tonight.
All right. So now we'll enter into deliberations. Yeah, once we get in. Mr. Mayor?
First, I'd like to say that, and Brian, correct me if I'm wrong, but this is a plan development, a PD, and when you have a PD, the zoning kind of goes out the window, right? And the PD becomes the new zone. So this PD that we have before us right now, Development Order 1311 that we're going to amend, this is kind of writing up the zoning for this thing. Is that correct?
Mr. Chair, that essentially is correct, but it doesn't alleviate you from the responsibility of meeting other city codes that aren't necessarily specified, like, for instance, noise and those kind of things. You are creating your own zoning district with your own set of special zoning rules in a PD.
As I read through this, we're amending a development order that was written for a subdivision. And it's a 12-page order, and just about 95% of what's in there has to do with houses and setbacks and streets and roads and homeowners association, and very little except this list of 14 items is the same as what's in here. I feel like we should have written up a new development order, 19-something, that just talks about an equestrian showplace and all the things that pertain to that. So as far as an action to take tonight, Mayor Marlowe's name is on the end of this thing for signature. It's a long way from being ready to sign, and I'm not sure what kind of a motion we could make. I don't think we can send Development Order 13-11 amended unless we're here till 4 in the morning and we go through this line by line and take out all the stuff that doesn't belong and put in what we want in here. But what's appropriate is not homeowners associations and setbacks between houses and things. What's appropriate is the noise limits and buffering, I think, are the two big things that we want in here. We have been, this commission has spent many, many hours talking about noise limitations, but I was thinking, to speed things up, we've kind of had a long discussion about noise from events when we did the Woodyard Grill application. Mayor Marlowe, you remember a lot of that stuff. But we did finally hammer out some things that we thought would be appropriate for a commercial event that makes noise that backs right up to residential. And I thought that was pretty good. I thought maybe we could just take the noise restrictions that we put on Woodyard Grill and copy them over here. I don't even remember what they are, but I think we spent a lot of time, a lot of dialogue over what they should be, and we finally got something that was agreeable to the community and to the business owner, and I think they were pretty good. And for buffering, I think we need a vegetative buffering around 3 sides of the thing, much like we have done with other special exceptions to agriculture. But other than that, most of the stuff that's in here, it's just got to come out. So I have a very uneasy feeling is what are we going to ask Mayor Marlowe to sign next week? Because a lot of work needs to be done between now and then. I understand that the county is on a timeline, and I think we can. I don't like to do it this way. I don't want to do it this way again. But to meet this very important timeline, I think we could empower planning and zoning and the mayor to sit down and work out a document that we can present to the commission a week from tonight. But a lot of work has to go into it. I feel a little bit uneasy that I won't see it again after tonight, and I really don't know what we're passing, but I guess I would be willing to pass something along with the guidance that we put some sound restrictions, noise restrictions, and buffering in there to keep these folks from being unduly disturbed.
Mr. Chair. Well, I think it would be appropriate. I mean, normally what we are trying to do here is give staff guidance on everything that we want to see. So it's very rare that something comes in front of you guys that you don't kick back to them and say, well, we'll send it to the commission with these changes. We want to see this, we want to see that. So I guess the question is, and I agree with everything that Mayor Conrad said, is does staff feel like, and does county staff feel like they've heard enough of the board's concerns and the residents' concerns that you guys can spend the next week, really hammering this thing out? That would be my question. Answer it honestly.
Yeah.
The other option would be that you guys, we have a special meeting of the P&Z and you guys bring something back to us before.
Mr. Chair, what I would recommend as staff is that I understand Mr. Conrad's concern over the document itself, because, like I said, what you're actually looking at is just the elements that were pertinent to being able to use for the uses for the agricultural fairground. We'll call it the agricultural, the equestrian center facilities. That part is easy enough to clean up for the next for the first hearing of the commission, but I would ask that you provide somewhat more specific direction in terms of key elements that you want staff to incorporate into the recommendation from the planning board going to the commission. I can come up with a whole laundry list based on and we'll go back and we'll watch the video again a couple times and make sure that we get all those points. But staff would need to know specifically of all the things that were brought up by the public, the neighborhood members and all, which of those you absolutely do want into the recommendation, so the staff's not.
Before we go into that, can we? What isn't covered? If the verbiage in the ordinance is we're going with whoever's regulations are more strict, what's not covered by that? Because wouldn't that cover sound, light, all of those things? Pretty much that covers, because that's my understanding is that as long as that language is we're going whoever's is more strict. So my question is, what's not covered by that? Because that would be what you would need direction from this board.
We could definitely take that direction to apply that standard.
Okay.
Go forward with that.
And also, could a motion be presented based on Mayor Conrad's concern to basically strike out every reference to the residential aspect that he was concerned about?
I think it'd be easier to write a new ordinance. There's very little in Development Order 1311 that has anything to do with a fairground. It's all about a subdivision, a homeowners association, power and water and sewage and setbacks. And I think it would be better to just start from scratch and write a development order for Canterbury Fairground or Alachua County, whatever we call it, agricultural and equestrian. Don't call it fairground.
Wouldn't we have to though amend the current since it's currently under the owner who brought the previous.
It would just overtake it. We always put that line at the end of our ordinances, it repeals anything in conflict.
That's
previously.
exactly it. That's how we handle it. So start fresh.
I don't want to prolong what's taken such a long time to get to.
I would simply say to staff, take what you have that can be salvaged and take Mayor Conrad's advice. And it sounds like there's a lot that needs to be gone that is going to go in a totally different direction. But if there's something there that you can use in the interest of time. But again, this is kind of what this process is about, is how do we write this up to where it meets everybody's, and that's what we send off to the commission. And that would be my job as your liaison to the commission to make sure that what they end up is what you guys talked about.
So since we're deliberating on this, it's kind of like a gamble. You know, if we don't do this, we risk, God knows, like we stated earlier, to come in here, privatize it, and do what they want with the land, and there's nothing we can do to stop them. Or we take the gamble with what chips we have and what we know and the trust that we have, even with the county commission, and entrust in the fact of this is what it's going to end up being. This is, you know, there's not going to be a facility center there. There's not going to be truck stops there. There's not going to be whatever the case commercial is going to be there. We can entrust that this is what it's going to end up being. As far as a fairground is concerned, you know, the noise ordinance, there's a lot of tools that we can utilize, I feel, here versus letting it not. I really honestly feel that there's a lot of work that went into this, and now we really gotta, like you said, Mr. Chair, you know, it would be a shame just to kick it back. No, you know, let's work with what we got. Let's move with a noise ordinance. Let's move with, you know, a light ordinance. You know, the buffer. I agree with Mayor Conrad. Buffer on 3 sides. Why was there even a consideration of buffer on 1 side? I want buffer on 3 sides. If there are 3 residential units on 3 sides, there should be buffers on 3 sides. I agree. But to risk it going privatized, honestly scares me. We at least here we have some control of what's going to happen. We can't say per se what's going in there, but we can make ordinance against what we can unattract certain things from coming. In other words, that's my 2 cents on that. Is make enough verbiage to unattract certain things from coming here, and attract others like agriculture and what we want.
Yes, Mr. Chair, I don't think we need a buffer on 3 sides, since one side is the potential area for the Newberry Ag Tech Park and won't have any residences on it towards the commercial farm property.
And I agree with that, I meant to say 2 sides.
There's no residential on the third part.
All right. Anybody have, Ms. Wong, do you have anything? Anybody want to make a motion?
Question for me. Normally you read the title, we've got an order, development order in front of us. If we change it to a new development order, can we still pass it tonight, or do we have to pass development order 1311 as amended?
You could do it either way. If you want to write the new order, then the motion should include that. I think we already read the title here of from the staff report. So the motion would be along the lines of approving the application subject to drafting up a development order that would replace 13-11, focusing on striking the residential language and being guided by the higher standards principle and so forth. And if that motion is approved, this is really more of a recommendation than anything that will be presented to the Board of Adjustment next week.
That's my motion. What he said.
That's what I would have said.
And with the maker, well, I'd like to offer an amendment to the motion, if the maker.
Well, it hasn't been seconded yet, so
Okay,
you're-
well, that's why I'm gonna make to see if you'll accept this, to add to. Okay. We have a second? Yeah, well, is there a second for the motion on the floor?
Second.
All right, is there any comments from our citizens on the motion on the floor? All right, now will the maker of motion entertain an amendment to include the installation of the high-density vegetative buffer on the northern property line and western property line where the residential development is?
I think that's it.
Was that in the motion?
Not specifically, but
Okay. Limiting the area where the carnival of Midway would happen to the south road?
Well, out of an abundance of caution, why don't you tack that on just to make sure?
Okay. So I would like to be able to add on, limit the area where the carnival or Midway activities are conducted to the south of the main arena area, which is the State Road 26 site. I'd like to limit the evening operating hours to 10 p.m. on Sunday through Thursday and no later than midnight, possibly 11 o'clock.
Could we change that to match up with what the Woodyard Grill, which is similar to that, but it has certain days of the week.
See, I don't know the specifics of it.
Okay. I think the motion, as I understand it, is that we have directed staff to go back and under the guidelines of whosever regulation is stricter, that's whose guidelines that we are going to place into the motion. So if the regulations that we have on Woodyard are more restrictive, those would be the ones that would take effect automatically.
Do we have operating hours as limitations of Woodyard?
I want to say we do.
Not the operating hours. We limited the hours they could make noise. That they could have
Outside,
entertainment, open air entertainment.
I thought that's what you meant. Yeah, not operating, but that where you could have the band playing and those kinds of things.
Even in the limited non-noise area, you still got light because people are using the facilities, and the hours of operation, also hit upon the hours that those lights are on.
But like in the youth fair, that's a 24-hour thing. You got those animals there all the time, and people working around the clock.
Yeah.
I think if we leave it with the whosever ordinance are more restrictive, then remember that the commission has two bites at this apple also. So if we start getting very specific, well, we don't know whose would have been more more restrictive. So I like the motion that legal presented because that gives staff and the county staff the chance to work this out and see whose is going to be more restrictive, bring that back to the commission. And I thought that was the direction that we were headed with that motion. If we start putting it very specific, we don't even have a site planned yet, so it's going to be very difficult to put some of these things, you put them in the motion, and it just can't logistically work that way. Now we have another problem. So I thought that language was very good because it allows everybody the flexibility to still go with whoever is more restrictive while not tying anybody's hands at this point in the process.
So I will.
Just another one. Hang on 1 second, sir. Once the motion is made, then it will be another opportunity for public comment.
Going touch on what you were saying.
I know, we just have a process. I'm sorry. that process,
All right. Based on what you said, I will rescind my request for an amendment. So we have a motion on the floor and a second. All those in favor? Oh, wait a minute. Do we have any comments from the public regarding the motion on the floor.
Well, I'm concerned about the.
If you could come up to the podium, sir.
I'm concerned about the noise and everything too, but we can't put a regulation on, and we were discussing to putting this regulation on an area that's 36 acres, that's only a half of an acre that's downtown here. We can't do that. It has to be equivalent, regulations have to be equivalent to what we already have in place to the size of the facility that is coming. So you can't say that this half acre or little lot here has to be, we're going to enforce 36.5 acre regulation on them. It's impossible. That's penalizing the agricultural farm coming in. That's saying you can't even have a cow in there. They're making too much noise because this quarter acre has this much decibels they have to follow. It won't work. So that's what I just wanted to say.
Any other public comments? There being none? Well, yeah, we deliberated and we got a motion and a second. Need to say something? Yeah. Say something? You want a minute? No. All right. All those in favor of the motion say aye. Aye. All right, motion passes. Thank you all very much.
Before folks leave, I don't know if this is on anymore. We're still in a meeting, but if anybody has any further questions, they want to talk, I'm glad to stay as long as you need. We'll sit and talk about this, if you want.
So this brings us to topics from members for discussion. Everybody have a great evening. Thank you for being here. Yes, sir. Before we go ahead.
So I asked, or I made a comment earlier, and I actually want to turn it into a question. Why can't we specify, kind of like Mr. Urchid had mentioned, where we have this application process for people to apply to get with inside of what you defined as the realm of regulations?
Could you and I sit and talk about that after the meeting is over?
Absolutely.
I think that's going to be a little bit longer of a conversation. I want to make sure
Okay.
I understand.
Sorry.
No
Yep.
problem.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, just for sake of completion here, we also have to announce the date of the
All right. The date that will be heard by the city commission, or first heard by the city commission, is March 25th. Let me see if we can do something on this. Yeah, this one's the 25th, the first hearing. All right, now, we'll get to topics from members for discussion. Bill, do you have anything?
No, sir.
Naeem? Ms. Waddle?
I do.
You do.
I do. I think that since it wasn't appropriate to do it as part of the motion that we had, that it might be worth the exercise of taking a look at the ordinances that would be in effect for Canterbury and seeing if the city can make itself in line with the county's more strict versions where that's appropriate, so that there's no confusion ever. Newberry's ordinances would always be hopefully prevailing, and I think that I don't know how to make this happen, but that I know since we're in a contract with our law enforcement, but to somehow figure out a way, because I've been in front of this board and heard it, I've sat in the audience at commission meetings and heard it, with the noise ordinance and lack of enforcement and lack of attention to the enforcement, and I really don't want, I know that some of the people said Newberry Oaks, they weren't as concerned with the noise as the fairgrounds, but it is a problem when we do have complaints about the noise that go unanswered or I don't know what the right word, unaddressed. And, you know, if I can hear a concert at Waytown Center in Newtown, I can't imagine what it might be like for the people in Newberry Oaks. And with a facility that can have this right next to them. So I want to make sure that the city and our law enforcement contract pay attention to that detail for these people.
I think that's something that has to be taken up with the county because the county's responsible for that.
It is, and again, you know, if anybody ever calls in a noise complaint, ASO's response is they can't do anything about it. I beg you to let us know that, because my first 3 years on the commission seems like it was all noise ordinance, and we spent a lot of money with legal rewriting a noise ordinance specifically so that it could be enforced, because our past noise ordinance, that was the problem. It has some contradictory language in it. And ASO said, well, it's kind of a problem. Now, there still are some logistical issues with enforcement, because at any given point in time in ASO's circulation of deputies, there's 1 to 2 officers who are trained to do the noise ordinance or the noise meter reading. And so it might take them an hour and a half to get out here, at which point sometimes the noise is now gone. It's dissipated. But again, these would be planned events. You'd know about them ahead of time. The county always requires, for any big events, they require more deputies to be on site. Sometimes they require the deputies to do the traffic signaling and all those kind of things. So per event, you know, these are people that know their business, and they generally tend, especially when they're included in the process, to make sure that all these things are taken care of. It's what we pay them to do, and they make a lot of money. So I agree, it's going to be something that we need to work out and ensure that happens. I remember when I first came on that Canterbury, and they still could have this, but they had the gun show. They would ride around on horses and they'd shoot guns, and every Sunday I would get a call about the noise ordinance for that. So it's, as Mayor Conrad said, you know, Canterbury as it sits right now can do all of the things that we are saying they can do into the future. So these aren't issues that we have to work out because of what's going on tonight. They're issues that we have to work out no matter what happens here tonight, because right now Canterbury can still do everything that we're proposing that it can do right now.
And they actually have more land to do it.
Yeah.
That was it? Anything else? Brian? All right. I've got nothing to add, so with that, we're adjourned.